Maybe someone gave you advice and you nodded without really listening because it sounded familiar. Maybe you read a book and skipped pages because you thought you already understood the lesson. Or maybe someone tried to guide you, but your mind shut down the moment you felt superior to the information. Here is the uncomfortable truth most people never face. There is a dangerous gap between knowing something and becoming it. Between hearing wisdom and living it. And if you've ever felt stuck, even though you know exactly what to do, this story will shake you awake. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't just his story, it's yours too. People came to him for advice, clarity, and explanations about life. But what they didn't say out loud was something far more revealing. At 34, he lived in the same small apartment, followed the same routine. Every night, he consumed content about growth. Every morning, he read about success. And every conversation he offered advice about change. Yet nothing in his own life actually changed. The most dangerous part wasn't that he was stuck. One evening, Elias met an old classmate named Aaron. Years ago, Aaron was average at best, not particularly smart, not especially impressive. But now something about him felt different. When Elias finished, Aaron smiled and said, "You explain life beautifully." Elias felt validated, until Aaron asked one question that pierced straight through him. "And how long have you been living it?" Elias laughed nervously and said, "Understanding comes first." Aaron shook his head slowly and replied, "Understanding doesn't come first. Obedience does." They said that after meeting him, something shifted inside them. Elias dismissed it as nonsense at first, but curiosity pulled him in. Not to learn, but to confirm what he already believed. The listener lived in a quiet, almost forgotten part of the city. The listener didn't ask Elias what he knew. Elias began explaining theories and routines, but the listener stopped him immediately and said, "No explanations, only actions." The listener leaned forward and said, "You don't suffer from lack of knowledge. You suffer from knowledge addiction." Elias felt defensive and said, "I already know all this." The listener smiled calmly and asked, "Then why hasn't it changed you?" He walked to the window and pointed at people crossing the street below, saying, "Some of them have read about discipline, patience, and success. You've mistaken familiarity for mastery." None of it was wrong, but none of it was alive either. That's when he realized something painful. The next morning, Elias returned, and the listener gave him a simple challenge. No books, no videos, no podcasts, only live what he already knew. It wasn't. On the first day, he tried practicing patience and failed before noon. On the second day, he attempted discipline and quit halfway. By the third day, he realized something terrifying. He didn't actually know these principles. He only recognized them. By the fifth day, something shifted. Elias stopped explaining life and started observing himself. When he felt lazy, he didn't justify it. He acted anyway. On the seventh day, Elias returned and admitted, "I feel stupid," the listener replied. Confidence built on knowledge collapses. When Elias asked why no one had told him this earlier, the listener answered, "They did." When he spoke, people listened. Not because his words were impressive, but because they came from experience. And now this story reaches you, because deep down, you already know what you should do. You know you should take the responsibility. But knowing hasn't changed you. Action will. For the next 7 days, stop consuming information. Choose one thing you already know you should do and do it daily, imperfectly but consistently. Then come back and comment what changed. Because the most dangerous sentence in personal growth is not "I don't know." It's "I already know that." And the people who change their lives are not the smartest. They're the ones who finally did what they already knew. After Elias emptied his cup, life didn't suddenly become easy. In fact, it became uncomfortable in ways knowledge had never prepared him for. Because once you stop hiding behind what you know, you're forced to face who you actually are. Elias began noticing things he had ignored for years. How quickly he avoided discomfort. How often he delayed hard actions while convincing himself he was preparing. How he used understanding as a shield. Before, he could explain fear. Now he had to confront it. Before, He could describe discipline. Now he had to live without excuses. And this is where most people turn back. Because ignorance is painful, but awareness without action is torture. Elias soon realized something terrifying. Knowledge had made him feel superior, but action made him feel small. When you know a lot, your ego stays fed. When you act, your ego gets bruised. Every failure felt louder now. One night, overwhelmed and exhausted, Elias returned to the listener and said something honest. Knowing hurts more than not knowing. The listener looked at him calmly and said, "That's because knowledge without courage is poison. It makes you aware of the gap." "Why do you think most people prefer learning over living?" Elias answered quickly, "Because learning feels safe." Exactly. Learning gives you hope without demanding sacrifice. It lets you feel like you're moving forward while standing still. But tell me this, how many lives have been destroyed by people who knew better but did nothing? Elias had no answer. From that day forward, Elias made a painful decision. He stopped giving advice unless asked. He stopped talking about growth unless practicing it. And most importantly, he stopped consuming information that didn't require action. This created a strange emptiness in his life. No constant stimulation. No dopamine from new ideas. Just silence and responsibility. And in that silence, old fears resurfaced. Fear of failing publicly. Fear of being seen as ordinary. Fear of discovering that, without his intelligence, he might not be special. Weeks passed and people around Elias began reacting differently. Some admired the change. Others felt uncomfortable. A few even mocked him. "You used to be so sharp," they said. "You don't talk like you used to." Elias smiled. Because he finally understood. When you stop feeding your ego, people who feed on it feel threatened. Not everyone wants you to grow. One evening, a young man approached Elias and said, "I've watched hundreds of videos about discipline, but my life is still a mess. What should I do?" The new Elias paused and said something far more powerful. "Stop watching, start failing." The young man looked confused. Failure with action will teach you more in 1 week than knowledge without action will teach you in 10 years. That moment made Elias realize he had finally crossed a line. He was no longer teaching information. He was transmitting experience. But transformation always demands a price. Elias lost opportunities that once came easily. People no longer invited him, just for his intelligence. Conversations felt slower, deeper, and less flattering. And there were moments when doubt crept in. Late at night, Elias wondered if he had thrown away the only thing that made him valuable. He returned one last time to the listener. "I feel invisible now." The listener smiled gently and said, "Good. Now you're free. When you no longer need to be seen as intelligent, you can finally become wise." The world doesn't reward people who know the truth. It rewards people who live it consistently. And suddenly everything made sense. Why so many intelligent people stay stuck? Why so many average people succeed? The problem has always been courage. Years later, Elias stood in front of a mirror and barely recognized the man looking back. Not because his life was perfect, but because it was honest. He no longer felt the need to prove anything. His confidence came from repetition, not recognition. From showing up, not sounding smart. And when people asked him the secret to change, he gave them the simplest answer of all. Stop asking what you know. Start asking what you live. And now, this story ends with you. Because somewhere in your life, there is a truth you already understand but refuse to obey. You don't need another video. You don't need another book. You need courage disguised as action. So here's the final challenge. Tonight, don't save this video. Do one thing you already know you should do immediately. Because knowledge ends here. And becoming begins now. Stay with this channel. Because the next story will force you to act.